Okay. Hi, class. I am here in Dunedin, New Zealand, with Sam Mann, who's a professor at Otago Polytechnic. Um, I'm continuing on our big trip, and Dunedin is in the South Island of New Zealand. And Sam and I have been colleagues for quite a long time, and it's exciting to see the place where he lives. And I wanted to ask him a few questions about New Zealand and about the work that he does and the role that he sees IT playing in it. So Sam, thank you for
That's
taking the
right.
time to
Yeah.
talk. I wanted to ask you, so we're here in New Zealand, what are some significant sustainability issues that you know of in this area? Any environmental challenges that are faced by New Zealand in general, the South Island or Dunedin specifically? Any things the class might be interested to know?
Yeah, well, a few things. While New Zealand's had a long history of human occupation, well, long and a few hundred years,
Sure.
the Europeans have only been here since 150 years. So we're new in that sense. So
Right.
we get away with being sort of clean and green, but quite a lot of it is because we're quite new, so we haven't broken stuff yet, and
Okay.
there's not that many of us.
Okay.
So we're really spread out. So we're still getting away with a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But the country is South Pacific. The top of it's subtropical, on the bottom of it's subantarctic, and long and thin with a mountain range down the middle. So we're actually pushed into quite small areas on the country. So a third of the country is conservation estate,
Okay.
and a lot of the rest of it is
Conservation estate is national park
national
type
parks
thing?
and so
Okay.
on. And a lot of the rest of it is sort of pseudo conservation estate, the rangeland mountains and things that are very, very low stocked, if at all. So a lot of the country isn't stocked, but the rest of the country is quite heavily, the bits that are stocked are quite heavily stocked.
Okay.
The biggest issue we have at the moment is the huge intensification of the dairy industry.
Okay.
Over the last 5-10 years. The dairy price went through the roof about that time ago, and so the farmers all suddenly invested in dairy.
Okay.
And the big issue with dairy is the two things. One of them is that the methane, while there are 3.5-4 million people, I think it's something like the equivalent of 80 million people's worth of cows.
Okay.
If you were to
Without
count the
wanting to be
methane.
too crass, methane comes from cow farts, right? Is that true?
It
Or
comes
does
from cow burps.
cow burps.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
In fact, when they tried to impose the ETS, the emissions trading scheme, there was a huge backlash from the farmers, and they referred to it as the fart tax. And so the right-wing government backed away from it because they're of course a conservative farmer-backed organisation. So agriculture is still not part of the emissions trading scheme, and that's one of the real issues. The real issue with dairy is that in order to intensify, you need to irrigate.
Okay.
And while it's still that sort of green grass that grows all year round, as an old advertising slogan, the leachate from the increased water is an issue for our rivers. So that's probably the biggest issue that we're facing at the moment. But we have this issue of we are a first world country, and we're the first world country that's got the third worldest export breakdown. So we're a commodity, agricultural commodity country. Increasing amounts of television and film and all the sort of associated work coming out of that.
Is that directly as a result of Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings?
Well, the same things that sort of created that industry have created lots of other industry around the country, because, as I say, we're a first world culture in essentially a third world environment in terms of the amount of development and stuff that we've got. So if you're going to want to make stunning television or films, here is a good place to do it. You've got the infrastructure and the landscapes. Scenery.
Sure.
I'd put those as the biggest issue. So the issue is, how do we maintain an economy and society without if you consider us a factory without a roof, is quite a good model, I think, of thinking about how we run the country. And we've pretty good at we've tidied up all the point source type pollution. There's not a lot of that sort of stuff. It's more about the bigger issues. Energy, we're really lucky. We're 80%, I think, renewable. Was a big move through the 50s through the 70s to develop renewable power, primarily hydro. And so when we look at that sort of like the energy sort of crisis, we know that our homes and things,
Right.
I think, it is an issue that it's, in most parts of the country, it's sort of a benign temperature most of the year.
Sure.
So while we might have a few days a year that are really cold,
Right.
and a few days of the year that are really hot, most of the time
You don't
it's
need
okay.
too much heating
So
or
we
air
don't.
conditioning.
But that means that our homes are sort of, when people come and look at our homes, they think, well, hang on, they don't have enough insulation, or they don't have enough heating, or they
Right.
don't have enough cooling. Well, actually, because most of the time we get away with it.
Yeah.
But as you kind of ramp up the expectations of what a home is like, then we start to have this. So there's big issues. Well, there's big movements now to retrofit and healthy homes and
Okay.
that sort of stuff. Not a lot, surprisingly, not a lot of development of solar.
Okay.
In terms of homes, certainly not like some southern Germany and stuff have covered in it. You don't see you see the occasional solar panel, but at work we've got solar panels and things on the roof.
Sure.
But it's not a big one. Transport is an issue. We're a long way from anywhere.
Okay.
Kiwis know how to fly because you have to. The nearest place is 3 hours flight to Australia.
Okay.
People say, oh, right next to Australia. Yeah, in the same way that New York's right next to
Right.
Europe.
Right. Yeah.
So we're used to that, and because we're long and thin and spread out, the next city up the road from us is 5 hours drive. Right. People tend to fly.
Yeah.
Not if you're sort of going on holiday with a family, you'd drive it, but
Yeah.
if you're going for a meeting in Wellington, there's no
Right.
option except to fly.
Sure.
And so that's an issue that's not going to go away.
Okay. And so, so you are a professor, I think, in the IT department right now, but you're moving to a new department. Could you tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing over the last number of years?
Yeah. Well,
what?
my background is I've got an honours in botany and geography,
Okay.
a master's in geography, and then my PhD, which was on systems for making better decision making in regional local government.
Okay.
And I've always believed that computing is a way to help do that.
Right.
So my interest in computing is as an enabler of societal change or
Right.
environmental improvement and so on. And the work that I've been doing stems from 2006, when the institution, Otago Polytechnic, decided that every graduate may think and act as a sustainable practitioner.
Okay.
Big call from the council and the leadership team, and it became my job to make that happen. And so we started looking at, well, what does that mean? What
Right.
does it mean for a midwife to be a sustainable practitioner, or an
Yeah.
engineer, or a computing person, or a business person, across the whole range of disciplines? And so we started looking at what does it mean to be this notion of the sustainable practitioner. And so that's been my primary research over the last, however many years that is, 10 or so years, trying to figure out what does it mean now. And one of the crucial things is looking at disciplines. I believe that every discipline can contribute. When I started doing this, I got a fellowship from UNESCO and stuff, and one day I had like some big announcement. I had like 10 different media people come and say, and they all said, but you're the IT person, what are you doing in the sustainability stuff? And for the first few of them I said, oh, it's okay, I used to be a botanist. And they went away happy.
Okay.
And then I realized, hang on, that's the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Because I believe that it makes more impact from computing's got more potential than the people who are out counting penguins or doing whatever it might be. And so, well, what does it mean? What does that mean? And so one of my big searches is for what I refer to as leverage disciplines,
Okay.
in which the sustainable practitioners can make a big difference. And if you think about the footprint, we're used to the notion of the footprint, the negative impact of whatever it is we're doing. But we can also think about the handprint, and that's the positive impact, the positive impact in particular. And so the leverage is the relationship between those two.
Right.
And so if you think about something like education as a really good one that's got a really, not much impact, not much negative impact, but an enormous potential. Every graduate that we send out that we can say, yeah, they're acting as a sustainable practitioner, enormous multiplier. Marketing's another one, and so is computing. So computing got enormous potential. So computing's impact, negative impact, depending on what you're counting, but if we just reduce it, sustainability as a whole, down to climate change, and we reduce that just down to anthropogenic emissions, computing contributes 2% of worldwide anthropogenic emissions. And you think 2% diddly, and that's nothing. It's the same as the airline industry.
Right.
And we think about, we were just talking about, the dangers of how terrible flying is.
Yeah.
Computing's just as bad.
Yeah.
So we need to fix that. We absolutely need to fix that. So there is certainly, we need to be doing the virtualization and all that sort of stuff. We absolutely, and the end of life and how we buy computers and all that sort of, absolutely has to be done. But if you think about the positive impact of computing, the potential positive impact, if you look just looking at the anthropogenic emissions, there's various numbers that people talk about, and people like the European Environment Agency and whoever else. And this is not just random people, but they talk about the computing's potential to reduce those being at something like 20 to 40%, depending on where you stop counting.
Okay.
And so, should we be focusing on that 2% or the potential for 20 or 40%?
Right.
And so, I've long believed that that's what we should be doing. We absolutely need to be, that's computing's impact. Yep, we need to be looking at our own house, undeniably, but we need to be looking at this efficiency work. Now, unfortunately, recently, in the last few years, I've decided that that's wrong. And it's not necessarily wrong, but there's two major problems with it. One of them is that notion that efficiency is going to get us there.
Right.
And the evidence is that and every time we come up with something more efficiently, we just transfer that use to something else.
Right, sure.
And there's all the issues about the values-based stuff, the sort of work that Brand Knowles and stuff, that kind of work about whether or not efficiency is something that's just pandering to people's wallets, and that's not helping. What we actually need to be doing is changing mindsets and so on. And the other issue is that it's not actually working. Yet we're bogged down with apps. To characterize it, we're bogged down with apps that tell you that you've been in the shower too long.
Right.
And I don't know if anyone's actually made that, but it's a good story.
Yes.
And we don't seem to be able to get any further.
Yeah.
And I really think that for us to make a difference, we really, really need to be focusing on value change, on mindsets, on engaging things that are actually going to make a difference, things that are going to get us to tipping points.
Okay.
And so it's more about how do we engage people, how do we focus people on this sort of stuff? Because everybody, even if people don't believe it, there wouldn't be a person in the Western world, at least, that hasn't heard of climate change.
Sure.
So it's not about awareness of energy. It's actually about getting them further. It's about getting them to actually make a difference. Or perhaps some of the things that's going to make a difference are things like how do we get people to actually engage in the political process?
Okay.
How do we actually get people to care about that sort of stuff? And we've done some work in the last couple of years with the City Council. City Council's got a long-term plan, energy plan. It was going to be called the Energy Descent Plan, but it's called the Energy Plan, Energy Strategy now. And it says that in 30 years, the city's going to have something like 30% of the energy available to it that it's got now. We're a small country, we've got no navy, well, one boat. If it comes to the oil wars, we're going to lose. We're not going to win that kind of stuff. So that has impact on things like where we build our houses. So should we be favouring inner city fill rather than building out in the suburbs, doing that lifestyle block that we'd like to do, but the city isn't going to, in the long run, be able to manage that, maintain that kind of thing. The importance of this is, how do we actually engage in people in that?
Right.
The city can't just impose that and say, no, you're building here now, because they'll just get unelected and the next lot will change it.
Yeah.
We actually need to take the city with us on that. The city needs to accept that the decisions about the people, the citizens, need to accept that the decisions about where they're allowed to build houses are a consequence or a part of this bigger picture.
This bigger values.
And so I think that is where computing still does have a significant thing. So it's working on that values work, that how do we take people on there, and it's a real challenge, particularly in academia, because the whole notion of wicked problems is that these are not things that are amenable to single factor intervention, all the things that people, your students will be working on for their PhDs and so on, they've got to fit this into a PhD cycle. Well, no, actually we're talking about intergenerational equity. We're talking about how do we get the people that haven't been born yet around the council table.
Right.
Because we just don't have the models for that.
Yeah.
How could computing possibly help for that? Now, I'd like to think yes, but then if you think about the people that are born now but happen to be living in Cambodia or Syria, we kind of blinker to them. We pretend those don't exist. So we're not very good about thinking about people that are here now.
Right.
What hope have
Let
we got
alone,
for the generations lasting for forever? So my role now, I'm just moving from computing to sustainable practice, of which computing is always going to be a part, because it's what I know how to do. And so it's more looking at how do we really nail this? What does it mean to be a sustainable practitioner? If you think about all of education being about the development of your professional lens, or your personal lens to start with, and then your professional lens. So as an engineer or as a midwife, you're seeing the world through that particular way of looking.
Right.
Now, what the Polytech is committed to is to say that that's also a sustainable lens. And so the big question that we want all of our students to the journey we want them to go on is to be saying, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And what we've worked out is that telling them is not the answer.
Yeah.
Getting them to ask it and then think through. Well, it's a bit of systems thinking, and it's a bit of understanding wicked problems. It's also a bit of thinking about the importance of place, or the importance of family and connections and so on, and coming up with that thing by themselves in a way that's actually going to stick. So that's the work that I'm focusing on at the moment.
Awesome. Well, that sounds really neat, and actually it's really relevant for the class, because since it satisfies a general education requirement, we have students from 40 or 50 different majors each time it's offered, coming from a wide variety of backgrounds. And so, one of the things we often ask students to do in the class is to think about what is the role of sustainability in their chosen profession or in their lifestyle. And so I think that's directly relevant to the class.
I'll just tell you what we refer to as the chainsaw analogy, because I think it's quite a useful one. Is that we can imagine that we're teaching somebody how to be a woodsman.
Yep.
And we're going to certify them as being sustainable. And what you can do is think about this to see that, okay, what's the equivalent of that for my job? Now, ignore the fact that it's about chopping trees down. That's a red herring. It's not about that. And so we can easily identify the skills that they need to do to be sustainable. So in this case, we can think that they're going to sharpen the teeth on the chainsaw, and they're going to recycle the oil. And we can test that they know how to do those things. The big question is, when they go out in their job, are they going to recognize the opportunity to do it?
Right.
Are they going to remember how to do it? But more importantly, what are they going to do when on the first day of their job, their boss comes and says, stop mucking around. Chuck the oil in the river, slap a new set of teeth on this. We're here to get this job down. Job done.
Right.
Now, what are they going to do in that situation? And people need to identify that. And so people need to be able to, in their profession, need to identify what are those skills, are they going to recognize the opportunities to do it, and what are they going to do when they're told not to.
How do you engage with this social challenge?
And you can ramp that up. You can say, okay, we're here to get this job done, and by the way, we're all pitching in for Jimmy's son's new wheelchair, so it's really important that we get that done. Well, do you sacrifice the river in order to buy Jimmy's wheelchair?
Right, sure.
And then we can ramp that up a bit further and say, well, on the second day of the job, you're told to chop down the very last of a precious tree. In New Zealand, you're told to chop down a kauri tree.
Yeah.
So again, what's the equivalent for you?
Yeah.
What's the thing that you're going to say, that's not right and I'm not doing it? And would you... And so what is that line? But then again, more importantly, two questions. Would you notice? We might say, okay, I am never going to buy sneakers that are made in Cambodia under slave conditions.
Right.
My father lives in Cambodia, so Cambodia sneaks into my explanations.
All right.
You might set that, and you might say, nope, child slavery is not happening on my watch.
Yep.
Well, how do you know? Are you checking?
Yeah.
So what's the equivalent for you in your profession? Is there a line at which you won't cross? Will you notice it? And then what are you going to do about it? And everybody has to take responsibility for their own work. So it's not okay and proven in the Nuremberg trials, it's not okay to say, well, I was just following orders.
Just following orders, sure.
And so we're actually doing quite a lot of work on the relationship between sustainability and ethics, in particular in incoming students, trying to unpack that about whether or not, do people get it, do people not get it.
Right.
People that come into education in New Zealand, at least, and it's looking like it's going to be the same in the States, fall for the sort of naive ethical understandings. Those sorts of things like, well, my job is going to be about doing what my job, I can't possibly object to this because I'm being told to do it, it's my job to do it. And you realize as you sort of go on through your career, actually it is your job.
Yeah.
The obvious example is health and safety.
Okay.
And in health and safety, you are required to intervene if somebody is about to climb up if you are told to climb up a rickety ladder, or if somebody else is about to climb up a rickety ladder. It's not okay to say, oh, I'll just get the camera out and YouTube this, it's going to be really funny. You actually, almost every, we found one exception, it was somewhere weird, you're required to do something about it. And my favorite definition of sustainability is ethics expanded in space and time.
Okay.
And so, how does that happen? How do we do that? Is actually my new favorite definition of sustainability is socio-ecological transformation.
Okay.
Because it takes the economics out of the picture. It said we're not, that's at best a mechanism to get us to this transformation that we need to happen. And the socio-ecological shows that how, by using socio, those two are inseparable.
Yeah.
You can't. That's. I've written a book about the definition of sustainability, looking at things like the Venn diagram and the concentric, the strong model. All of those, any model that has them as three or however many separate things that are somehow interrelated, is doomed to failure. And so it's those sorts of discussions that we try and have with students. That's what I'm trying to work on at the moment, and through computing, how do we enable the rest of the community to do that sort of stuff?
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to chat. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say briefly to a couple hundred UC undergraduates. Now would be a perfectly excellent opportunity, but if not, I can just say thank you and very much for taking the time to chat.
I would just say that at UC, do take advantage of the UCI. Is it UC or UCI?
It's actually across the entire UC system.
Take advantage of the focus that you do have on sustainability. There's not that many places that are seeing it in that way. I was particularly taken by the interdisciplinarity that you have, and I think that's absolutely critical to sustainability. The whole sort of notion of wicked and complex problems mean you're not going to solve it from a single vantage point. So you either need to know how to work with other people, or in fact take up something which is explicitly from multiple vantage points, multiple scales, time and space. So you're in a good place to be doing that.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Bye, bye, class. Have a good day. Bye, bye.